Hello everyone and welcome. Make a cup of your favorite drink and get comfortable because this is a wonderful time for news stories from Yellowcat. Send your own stories in the comments below and maybe they'll be in our new video. What's your homeowners association horror story? In former neighborhood, HOA board wanted to replace the fence that surrounded the entire neighborhood. Just the perimeter fence so that the neighborhood would look nice to the outside. Of course, two board members' houses also sat on the perimeter, so their fences would have been upgraded, which is fine. The cost was only a couple $100 per household, one-time fee, but to pass the fee, they held a meeting in a little 20-person local library room. Hundreds of community members flooded in to demand an explanation or at least hear it out. One community member had done some research. Per HOA bylaws, they were supposed to have obtained 3 quotes. They only got 1. Same member also dove a little further and found out that the quote had come from a brother-in-law of one of the HOA board members. Very sketchy. So the community demanded 2 more quotes, which both came in at about half of what the brother-in-law's contracting service had quoted. Our neighborhood HOA tried to make us remove the ivy from our house. After combing through the bylaws, there was nothing stating we couldn't have ivy. I put my foot down hard and told them if they made me remove my beloved ivy, then I would put 50 pink flamingos in my yard because there was no rule about it. They left us alone after that. Coworker lived in a very expensive and very high monthly HOA neighborhood. They were born in the Netherlands and had a Dutch flag sticker on their front window, maybe 3 inches tall. They got a $75 fine in the mail. Her dad read the rules over extremely well, went out and photographed over 75 US flags, went to the head officer and said he wouldn't be writing a $75 check until the person writes up all 75 of the following addresses, as there's no exception for an American flag. They dismissed his fine. I'm not sure if it's the same thing, but my condo corp gave me a great experience once. They were responsible for the exterior of our home. They all had to match on my street. Though I owned the thing, I had no power to, say, paint my front door a different color. Small things I didn't really care about giving up, really. Then one day, someone drives into my garage. It was a metal door. I had no idea what the H happened, but there was a huge dent and black paint scraped off whatever car had basically tried to drive into my closed garage. So I call the condo guys and they tell me I have to replace the panels from the same manufacturer. I had to pay for it myself because it isn't covered by their insurance and maybe my homeowner's insurance will cover it, but probably not since it's a condo and blah blah, I don't know, but they were right. What I had wouldn't cover it. Anyways, get in touch with the garage guys, they don't make those doors anymore. I tell Condo Corp, they insist it must be the same door. So I just think, what the H, and get a hammer and get inside the garage and pound it out as best I can. It looks like crap, but I don't care. So I get a knock on my door from someone from the corp. They came in person to tell me my garage door was not up to the standard of the neighborhood. Then I see they are parked in my drive with a black van with the front all scratched to S, and it clicks, they are the effing people who crashed into my driveway. I ask right away. They deny it, but the shade of black is actually slightly off and it's exactly the same color smeared all over my D door. They assure me there's no way that happened, even though the outline of the dent looks like an exact match. So they are going to fine me if I don't fix my door, which is impossible. And I'm not even sure if the fine is legal. So in the end, I refused to pay my BS fine and they stopped cutting my lawn, part of the condo fees. I refused to cut it myself. They threatened to fine me more for not keeping my lawn up to the standards of the neighborhood. By now, it's been 4 weeks or so. It's time for me to pay my condo fees for the month and I'm about to try to cancel the checks I'd given them. Whole thing is S. Then I hear a weed eater. Someone is doing my lawn. I'm shocked and I go out there and there is this kid working away. He stops and asks me, "What happened to your lawn?" I start telling him and he stops me almost right at the start of the story and says he's sorry and yes, he's the one who hit my garage. He parked there one day and just went stupid when he was gonna back up. He was in a hurry and had it in drive instead of reverse and gunned it. Then he tells me he filed the report before he went on vacation. He was just back now and didn't know he was supposed to cut my lawn and doesn't understand why they were denying everything when he reported it. So I call them immediately and tell them, look, I talked to blank and he told me he did it and reported it. What the F? And they said they'd look into it. Then magically they would cut my lawn and they phoned me to tell me the fines would not be enforced because I couldn't get the same door due to reasons beyond anyone's control. But they still didn't apologize or fix my door. And the thing is, I never saw that kid who did the landscaping again. I don't know if they fired him or what. Yeah, I decided to move shortly after that. When I was about 10, a new neighborhood went up across the street from us that had an HOA. The houses were very nice and probably worth $200K more than the average house in my town. My parents had owned our house for about 15 years at that point, and man did my dad like to pee them off. One story that sticks out is when I was a freshman in high school, my dad bought a large windmill meant for power. It wasn't one of the big ones, you see, but smaller in size, probably a good 20 or so feet tall. The HOA in the neighborhood tried to get him to take it down since they deemed it an eyesore. My dad pretty much told them to get lost since they couldn't do anything. They ended up trying to sue us, and the judge dismissed the case after my dad explained that the windmill was approved by the city planning committee and he had permits and that we weren't a part of the HOA. He still has it up and decorates it with lights for Christmas. Apparently, he put the windmill up to help reduce our electricity costs since this area is pretty spent. They didn't raise a fuss until after it was up. And there were things in the past they did to alienate us. We had about 3 or 4 acres of property and would ride motorcycles, and anytime we did, people from the neighborhood would come over and ask us to stop riding them. When it was being built, the neighborhood tried to buy our property for pennies, but my parents said no, which caused a sore spot. Fun fact, a lot of my friends growing up live in that neighborhood. We had our lot repaved over the course of a week or so, and we were required to park on the street while it happened. No biggie. Well, some guy late at night swerved to miss a cat with his Ford Expedition work truck and killed my Ford Fusion in the front and pushed me enough to hop on the curb and backwards into my wife's car. My car was totaled, wife had to have repairs, and he went to jail for 2 months cause he ran. In the end, I got a new car, so it worked out. Fast forward 2 months after I get my new car, which was a first for me. I go to leave for work, and as I walk down my steps and look in the lot, I don't see my new car. I usually park it in the same space every time. I finally found my car on the other side and not in a spot I would ever park in. I figured my wife moved it or something for a weird reason. Texted her, and she said she didn't. I then find out that the HOA decided to just tow and move my car because they had to fix a part of the lot and my car was in the way. I also find out that they moved about 5 cars without asking. What irritated me the most was I was at home when they did it. I never got a call, an email, a knock, nothing. They just decided to tow and move it. I went back to check on my car, and would you guess what? The plastic parts under my bumpers were scratched from being dragged on the pavement and the towing rig. I know it's just plastic and people can't really see it, but this was my first new car. I'm 2 months owing it, and I just wanted to take care of it and keep it nice looking. In the end, I had the HOA pay for the parts, but not the work. To this day, I'm still mad. I live in a condo with my dad and stepmom. My car at the time was admittedly a beater. The back end was duct taped up pretty bad and it had a lot of bumper stickers. My parents have really nice and new Buicks, so my old 90s Oldsmobile parked outside and they parked in the garage. I went on spring break with my sister and came back to my car in the garage. Apparently, the neighbors were selling their condo and my car in another driveway, and having nothing to do with their property, lowered their property value. They complained to the condo association, and until I sold that car, I wasn't allowed to park it in the driveway or on the street. Parking on the street isn't allowed here anyway. By the time I sold my car, they still hadn't sold their condo. It wasn't my Oldsmobile, it was the ugly white carpet in the bathroom. A guy with the name Bill Champion rose the ranks of the local board for a few years, became the president, and suddenly skipped town one night. Left his place empty without telling anyone he was leaving. Months later, there was a large deficit in funds discovered that was fudged on the books. So all of the homeowners who had been paying into this large fund that is supposed to be there when roofs and fences need replacement were bamboozled by this guy with a now clearly fake name. He probably does this as a long con across the country while profiting off of other shady dealings as well. Mine was actually my parents, and it luckily didn't last too long. I lived across the street from the neighborhood park, and home was boring. No one in the neighborhood was my age, so I just put my headphones in and get on the swing set and just get lost in the music. I was in middle school, didn't say a D thing to anyone, didn't do anything but sit on a swing set for years. Well, one day a mom and her daughter moved into the neighborhood, and she had a problem with the idea of a 13-year-old girl being in the same park as her daughter. She had a problem with it because apparently 13-year-olds had no business there and I should be forced to leave. Went to the HOA, they told her to F off because I knew the guy knew me, they knew I was cool. B keeps spending the next few months harassing me every D time. I'm minding my own D business on a swing set. B keeps telling me I have to go home or she's calling the cops. Eventually, HOA got sick of it and had a meeting, sat her down, and told her to leave me alone. This is not my story. I got it from a regular customer, happened probably 15 or so years ago now. He used to live in an old stone farmhouse, and when he bought the place, most of the farmland had been sold to a developer, leaving him with a 20-acre plot with the house in one corner. The developer put in a housing development next door, and a few years later, he gets a letter in the mail saying that his house is not following the HOA guidelines and was behind on his dues, and he owes them a buttload of money. Direct quote from the storyteller, and that they'll foreclose on his house if he didn't pay. He called them and pointed out that he's not a member of the HOA and they're welcome to try. So they filed a lien on his house and it was denied. They then tried to get him to sign up with the HOA, and when he said no, they filed a lawsuit and tried to force him into the HOA, which failed. The whole thing was so ridiculous that it ended up on the local news. He then started getting reported for supposed code violations, and after a couple dozen in few months' time, he discovered that the person reporting him was a neighbor. The neighbor's backyard butted up against his yard, and apparently both hated how his house looked and was on the HOA board. It took 2 more years and another lawsuit and many police visits for this whole mess to run its course. Funniest part is that 4 years before I was told that story, an electrical fire gutted the old farmhouse and the guy rebuilt on the other side of his property just to get away from the butthurt HOA guy. And since he didn't have to remove the old building, he left it, all gutted, fire blackened, and half collapsed, right where the butthurt guy could see it from his bedroom window. Thank you for watching. Guys, thank you for all of the support and likes. Subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed yet. See you next time.